Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. We have got a wonderful episode for you tonight. After we check in with our co-hosts, we will do a political news roundup covering a big win for justice here in Lexington, as well as Mitch's messy political divorce. Then we've got an interview with immigration and refugee rights expert Denise Bell to discuss why Republicans spend so much time and energy vilifying those coming to our nation for a better life, and also other details about the immigration and refugee system. If you don't know, Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State, organized as a 501c4. We're affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, or CAVE. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. More information can be found at www.progresskentucky.org or on our social media pages on how to volunteer and to support ongoing efforts. Production services and media content are provided by Couchfire Media. More information about Couchfire Media can be found at www.couchfiremedia.com. So who are you? Where are you? What does your protest sign say today? Checking in with our co-hosts. And you there watching on the internet, please join in. We've got that chat function. Let us know where you're watching from and what does your protest sign say today. So I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, just outside of, the central Lexington. I would say it's a suburb. It's totally a suburb. I'm in the suburb of Childsburg. Hard for me to say sometimes. I'm just going to embrace it. I'm in the suburbs. And my sign says, Jesus says a lot about immigration and nothing about abortion. Going to my co-host to the north, Nate.
Hey folks, this is Nate Orshan coming live and direct from Kit and Mai's house here in lovely South Frankfurt. And tonight my sign would say, Tuesday, July 6th, Lexington Courthouse Square, deadline for democracy, you want to be there.
Fantastic. All right, and welcome back to the show. Annabel, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, I'm pretty good. I'm Annabel. I'm in Woodford County, so like in between both of y'all. My sign would probably be some sort of like climate action sign, because I've been seeing all of Greta Thunberg's posts recently about like the record-breaking heats, and that is terrifying. So maybe try to do something about it. Maybe.
Maybe. It's just the earth burning. Why would we want to do anything about that? No, yeah, I'm with you. Let's do it. Hey, you Ken there. What you got for us?
Oh, hello, Aaron. I feel like people are always like complaining to me about how my protest sign take a long time. And so I switched up there at the very end. I know that you and Kimberly last week decided that you were not going to, or you were going to make up these fancy protest signs to go to make me jealous or whatever. But anyway, I made
Kimberly made that claim. Kimberly made that claim just for the record. And Kimberly's not here, so you were off the hook completely. But yeah, show me your sign.
I've got a sign. This sign is for you and Kimberly, and it's Bill Murray. Right here, there's Bill Murray saying you're awesome. So, Kimberly, Aaron, you are awesome. That's my protest sign.
And our heart goes out to Kimberly, who stuck at work and not in, necessarily the best. Anyone stuck at work, my heart goes out to. But the work that she does is certainly important work, and it's not always easy to deal with. So I'll leave it at that. But what I do want to do is move on to the first section of the show, our news of the week. We've got a couple of important stories to share with y'all. And this first story comes to us from Nate.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Yes. So our first story is from Lexington, believe it or not, and no-knock warrants. We love a happy ending. So this is an issue that Kernels of Truth has been covering for a while, since we had Reverend Clark Williams on the show, and it's finally finished, thank goodness. Mayor Gordon signed the ordinance outlawing no-knock warrants after the Lexington Council voted unanimously? No, not unanimously, 10-5 to end the practice, despite a ninth-hour effort by Preston Worley to offer an amendment that would have kept the practice as an option, despite adding additional requirements to requesting such a warrant. So let's take a look at a little clip from that meeting. Take it away, Ken.
Until tangible steps are taken towards reforming policing practices, policies, and procedures, there will continue to be distrust and tension between the Black community and law enforcement. The issue of banning no-knock warrants is larger than the discontinued use of a policing tactic that unjustly and disproportionately affects the Black community.
I'm thinking about their family members in bed, one of them calling 911 because they thought they were being robbed. And the reason I'm using such specific language is because this is what happened in the case of the Rice family in 2015.
Lexington is a one bad day away from having something like that happen again. Did we not learn anything from Breonna Taylor?
We are not anti-police. We know we need police in our community. Nobody wants to be more safe than we do in our community.
Please, please consider what we have gone through. Not just Black families, but white families too. We are traumatized. It's time to stop this.
And Chief Weathers has suggested, as we've heard this evening, that no-knock warrants are a tool he wants to keep available for emergency use. While I understand his desire to have as many tools as possible, there is a cost to using the tool of no-knock warrants, and that cost is community trust and confidence.
We see the antics, the back and forths, kind of the telegraphed moves that we're doing, the politics, for lack of a better term, in order to water this down and appease, frankly, a bully in the FOP.
The FOP is the only one asking you to make that choice. They are asking you to choose police over the community. In the case of no-knocks, we're asking you to choose the community and the police, as no-knocks are dangerous for both.
I remember watching the video of Eric Garner being murdered by police. It was the first time I had ever watched police kill someone. I was 12 years old and I was traumatized. It was a trauma that I will never forget, a trauma that I'm reminded about every time I hear of a Black person being killed by police.
I don't ever remember feeling any sense of fear that police officers would break into my home at night, even mistakenly. And I think it's horrifying that people have to live with that fear. And because of the color of their skin.
That we need the police as well as anyone else. But not only do we need the police in our community to watch various things that are going on, but we need them in the community to protect us. We do not need to be policed. And I put it like this, it's a shame when folks know when they're wrong, but yet they go on and do it anyhow. You know that we're being profiled, you know that we're being mistreated in a certain way, but yet you're willing to stand, and man, this that you're talking about, a substitute, there's no substitute for what's happening.
The only people who feel safe with no-knock warrants, regardless of how often they are executed, are people who don't believe that they would ever be executed against them, even by mistake. And no one who looks like me has that luxury of believing that. It troubled us when a council member got the proposed ordinance amended in committee to strike the 15-second wait period after knocking and announcing, and then still voted against her own amendment.
And who are these council members who have not learned the lesson of Breonna Taylor's murder and who do not feel that they ever have to worry themselves about cops busting in their door in the middle of the night? Their names are Richard Maloney, council member at large, Preston Worley from District 7, Whitney Elliot Baxter from District 9, Amanda Bledsoe, District 10, and Fred Brown, District 8.
Yeah, it's disappointing, right? That so many members decided to, ignore the commission on racial justice and equality, right? So this was something that the mayor put together after all the protests, and that 70-person volunteer commission came up with 54 recommendations to try to address racial injustice and equality issues in Lexington. And this was just one of those recommendations. But the fact that 5 members of the city council were willing to just ignore what the community was so clearly communicating to them is just very disappointing. And I'll just admit it. Preston Worley is actually my district representative, so I was very disappointed in the role that he played, which was advanced, as you mentioned, Nate. He's the one who brought up this substitute amendment that would have let the police continue to use no-knock warrants. So really disappointing. How do you feel about it, Annabel? I know you were in the streets in Lexington a ton, kind of helping to amplify this call for action. What do you feel while watching this?
I feel like it's definitely a step towards racial justice, at least getting there, it being brought up and voted on in this whole town hall hearing moment is great. But I feel like it's not necessarily getting where it needs to be yet. We still have so much farther to go. And I feel like it's not really, I guess, trending is the right word anymore, on the media or whatever. And that needs to come back up because people still care. People will always care. It just needs to be reassured.
Yeah. Ken, how about you?
I felt like that the article was interesting. How feelings were mixed. I think that the community didn't have mixed feelings, but the governor and police chief Weathers, they were against the no-knock warrants, which I find kind of odd because of the danger that has been proven for no knocks. The GOP, I feel like it's all based on some kind of, policing the community, whereas, we've in past episodes talked about, how there's a for-profit justice system, and there's a kind of a war being waged on Black history, like the 1619 Project, and 23 states have banned critical race theory. There's clearly a divergence when it comes to who is getting justice in our communities. There's some stats from mappingpoliceviolence.org. 230 Black people have been killed by the police since George Floyd was murdered. Black people are 3 times more likely to be killed by police. 90% of all officers have not been charged after serving capital punishment, i.e. the death penalty, since 2013. Fayette County's systematic racial disparity has been covered on this show. So this no-knock bans are a small victory, but economic and social barriers continue. So I feel like we need to keep going. This is still an issue. Aaron?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that this was one of 54 recommendations, right? And if it takes this much work to get the other 53 recommendations put into place, heaven help us, right? We need to have leadership that is, actively seeking to advance equity and to actively seeking to address the disparities in our justice system. And I saw you popped up the image of the marijuana enforcement here in Kentucky. That's a huge issue. That's certainly something, folks, if you want to find out more information about it, you can check out our social media pages. We've got an action alert there. And it's got some information about what's happening. But, when Black people in Kentucky are nearly 10 times as likely to be charged with marijuana crimes as white folks, even though Black folks, I think smoke pot at, slightly lower levels than white folks. So, it's kind of all you need to know to some degree. It's a huge mix of challenges, and no-knock warrants are but one small piece. It's great to see this advance, lots of work to do. I was shocked when you just said, Ken, that 23 states have already banned teaching critical race theory. Which, I feel like it's only been a thing for like a month, right? But hey, Fox got all into it and, said it 15,000 times, and Tucker Carlson is out there beating the drum each and every evening on his show for morons. It's having an impact. It is landing with these foolish lawmakers who couldn't tell you what critical race theory is. I mean, I'm sure Kentucky will probably, jump on that bandwagon as soon as the legislature's back in session. They've already pre-filed a couple of bills about it. They can't pass the bills yet because we're just not in session. So the fact that 23 states have done it, when I'm sure there's not, that's astounding to me, because there, a lot of legislatures are out right now. So that means there's a bunch of other legislatures in the that could add to that total. And that's disappointing. And the fact that 23 states are willing to, ban the teaching of, systematic racism just is, of course, the best example of, systemic racism, right? So here we are. The challenge remains. We like to say we've come a long ways, but have we? Have we really? All right, so and more of a guilty pleasure story that we're going to move on to. This, now that we've eaten our vegetables, we're going to have some dessert. This is it's a political breakup has happened, folks. Mitch and Trump. I think it's over. I think that political marriage of convenience is over. So the headline grabbing article published in The Atlantic this week, the writer Jonathan Karl, I think it was excerpts from a book. He had a number of interviews with former Trump AG Bill Barr, quite possibly the worst AG in history. And that's saying something. He is apparently desperate to rehabilitate his image. He wants to keep from falling Rudy into the toilet and into the legal troubles. He has spilled all sorts of tea, recasting himself as quite the hero and standing up to Trump and telling him the big lie had no validity. Of course, don't listen to it, because he was providing all sorts of, he was basically Trump's personal attorney, not the chief federal law enforcement officer of our nation. He let the laws and standards of the Attorney General's office, of the Department of Justice, take a back seat to the political inclinations of his boss, who was very vocal about what he wanted, whether he was working him on Twitter or he was calling him directly, and that is just disgusting. What he has done to degrade a very important office, and it has such an important role in our society. And the fact that in this article was this revelation, though, beyond what Bill Barr was trying to do to rehabilitate his image. He revealed that Mitch McConnell had called Bill Barr to try to dissuade Trump from pushing the garbage lie about election theft. Right. So not terribly shocking that Mitch was desperate to shut Trump up. Right. So what's happening, in the background is, of course, that Trump lost the election. Everyone knew it was legit, except for the idiots that Trump kept telling it was not legit. So Bill Barr knew it was, a legitimate election. Mitch knew it was a legitimate election, but Trump wouldn't shut up about it. Mitch, meanwhile, if we recall, was desperate to win 2 special elections in Georgia so that Mitch could continue to be the majority leader, the most powerful member of the Senate, and had to win both of these elections to make it happen, or just had to win one of them. So Democrats had to pull the hat trick really in Georgia. So win for Biden, and then these 2 special elections. And of course, Mitch, being not a moron, he knew that if Trump kept shouting about how your votes didn't matter because the elections are just being stolen from you, then a special election where turnout is usually quite low compared to a general election, this would be bad math for the GOP. So he, of course, is trying to get Trump to shut up. And the thing that is crazy to me is who he calls to get Trump to shut up. And maybe his call log is littered with every Republican in the administration. But he did call Bill Barr, who is, should not have a role in, politics, but calls Bill Barr to get Trump to shut up about his lies. So this is, I think, to me, gives up the game that obviously, everyone knew Barr was a political operative, and he was not doing his job. So this story comes out. It's in the Atlantic. Excerpts are everywhere. And guess who didn't like the story? So Trump is freaking out. Like, I'm sure there's another statement being issued as we speak, but he blasted Mitch over a number of days this week, saying that he and Barr allowed the radical left Democrats to flood the system with mail-in ballots that are very open to fraud, because Trump still doesn't understand exactly how mail-in ballots work, and he's pretty sure they're all just shipped in from China, or you can pick them up down by the river. Trump is then going after them in a doozy of a statement, right? So, to find these statements, you have to look. I didn't look. The journalists looked. But, remember, Trump is not on any social media platform. It is easier to find Progress Kentucky content than it is to find Trump's views right now. And we only have less than 5,000 followers on Facebook. So get to that, people. But this statement cracks me up. Had Mitch McConnell, here's the quote, had Mitch McConnell fought for the presidency like he should have, there would right now be presidential vetoes on all of the phased legislation that he has proven to be incapable of stopping. Not to mention, he lost 2 senatorial seats in Georgia, making the Republicans the minority in the Senate. Trump continues. He never fought for the White House and blew it for the country. Too bad I backed him in Kentucky. This is my favorite part. Too bad I backed him in Kentucky. He would have been primaried and lost. Based on press reports, he convinced his buddy Bill Barr to get the corrupt, based on massive amounts of evidence that the fake news refuses to mention, the election done, over with, and sealed for Biden ASAP. Woo! That is a stem winder of a statement. Clearly, Trump could use an editor, but this idea that it was Trump who won Kentucky for Mitch McConnell, ignoring all evidence to the contrary, ignoring Mitch McConnell's long history of winning elections in Kentucky before anyone had ever heard of Donald Trump. Really pretty phenomenal statement. But I will say this, I think this marriage of convenience is officially over, and those two are not going to find reconciliation any further. So yeah, my favorite story of the week, really. It's totally just it's sugar. There's nothing good for you in that story, but I just love it. Nate, what do you think?
Well, I just, it pains me to stick up even slightly for Mitch McConnell, but as we know
right now, stop talking, cut his mic.
We used to be, for people who are just parachuting in today, we used to be called the Mitch McConnell Retirement Committee. So that gives you a little hint about how we feel about that guy. But, Trump himself visited Georgia in December campaigning for those Republican senators that lost. So who lost it? It wasn't Mitch McConnell. If anyone did, it was him, the figurehead of the Republicans. That's it. Thank you.
Sure thing. Anyone else want to weigh in on that substance-free story?
I do want to say one quick thing. The big lie strikes again. Yay! The country clearly suffers from more Trump derangement syndrome. I think that most Republicans are going to fall in line. I feel like they're gonna get a boost from Trump. He's on a little tour around spreading his little lies, and so his little terrible, deadly lies. I don't want to call them little because they're deadly at this point. That's why the For the People Act is important. And as far as I'm concerned, McConnell is untouchable. For all we did, he still has everything he wants, and Trump can waltz back into his life if he wants to, or not waltz back into his life if he doesn't. I feel like a record. You remember albums? Like, I just feel this accountability, scratch, accountability, scratch, accountability. It's like stuck in my head. I feel like we need accountability for what is being talked about, not just silly little arguments between, who cares what Trump says? He needs to be held accountable.
Absolutely. Speaking of the big lie, though, actually, I think today the House voted to create a select committee to investigate the big lie. So the thing that Mitch McConnell was desperate to stop from happening, if folks recall, he asked for a personal favor of all his Republican senators to not support a bipartisan commission, which again, why is that a personal favor? Why do you need a personal favor there, Mitch? You actually did speak out against the big lie in the immediate aftermath of it, when they're still sweeping up glass and, moving bodies out of the Capitol. And he, of course, then came to his senses quickly and decided that politically it would be horrible for the Republicans to have that type of scrutiny on their fealty to Trump and the lie that he shared. So, but that's going to be happening. What that means is it's Benghazi with substance. It's going to be issues that actually matter to the future of our country. There's going to be actual investigations, and that will be. And I don't want to be a partisan here, but I think that stuff will be timed to have an impact on midterm elections, is my wild speculation, because Democrats would like to make that happen. And I think the best time to remind Americans of anything that you want them to remember before an election is while they are walking to the polls to vote. So, if this was released now, people would forget it immediately. But anyway, that's the story. And it's... the thing about Trump, he's bad for our country, but he's entertaining nonetheless. He is a showman. We'll give him that. All right,
he's entertaining in a terribly scary way. It's like I'm frightening.
It's terribly entertaining watching our country slump towards autocracy, and we've got some challenges here in this nation. I don't know if that's the through line so far today. Challenges remain in our nation. All right, so we are going to move on to our interview. This is a really exciting interview, and not just because I've been listening to Kit O'Connor, who is a big fan and who lined up our guest to join us. But Denise Bell is the researcher for refugee and migrant rights for Amnesty International. Previously, she was actually with the U.S. Department of Justice, so maybe she wants to weigh in on Bill Barr. She was the attorney advisor on the New York Immigration Court. She was also a Sudan country specialist for Amnesty International USA and the campaigner for its Darfur campaign. She's worked in various capacities on forced displacement issues since the mid-1990s, when she worked with refugees in Croatia following the Dayton Peace Accord. She is barred in the state of New York and sits on the city bar's Immigration and Nationality Law Committee. And just to be clear, if you're not an attorney, being barred in the state of New York is far different than being barred from the state of New York. So that's where she's actually passed the bar and is, a lawyer in good standing, is in New York. And so welcome, Denise Bell, to Kernels of Truth.
Thank you so much for being here. I was thrilled when Kit invited me on to speak.
And then you watched the show, and yet you followed through anyway. Thank you so much.
It was a win-win, right? Win-win.
So in case the viewers don't remember, back in the day, as somebody mentioned earlier, we were focused very much on Mitch McConnell, and Kit O'Connor, Nate's partner, would show up from time to time to have a segment that we called Mitch Never Lets Us Down and Letting Us Down. And some of my favorite clips actually are from Kit's rants, Kit's essays. They continue to do important work with Progress Kentucky. But the most recent addition to the show is our connection to Denise. So Denise, we're really excited to talk with you. Obviously, immigration is a critical issue for Republicans' political aspirations. And I know that you don't delve in opinion, you delve in facts, and that's great. That's why we can make you an honorary kernel of truth, because, that's what we're all about here, the facts. So tell us about the facts, right? So it's politicized. We've got this story coming to us, every time you turn on Fox News, you turn on, these right-wing media outlets, we're hearing that this is a high water mark for people coming across the southern border. The story is they come across, they claim asylum, and then they're released, and then they never show up for their court dates or their hearings. Meanwhile, they're out there kind of sucking up all social services and, committing crimes. So that's the story that we are presented with time and time again. What are the facts what is actually going on with our asylum system and our immigration at the southern border?
I'm so glad you asked that. And the story that I just heard is not the facts. And before I go further, I do want to reiterate that Amnesty International is a nonpartisan organization. And so our view is the only thing we do is to advocate, campaign, and research to uphold human rights. And it doesn't matter who the administration is, who's in power, we hold them to account for their human rights obligations. And so while we are talking about a lot of false narratives right now, we are equally, we have turned our spotlight, as we say, on the current administration. And just recently I published a report calling for a course correction, an urgent course correction on the Biden administration's treatment of people seeking safety at the border. And that has to do with the fact that the government is actually continuing a Trump era policy of falsely using a public health quarantine to block and expel people seeking safety at the border. And then when people do get into the country, falling back on detaining them, arbitrary detention. But why are we here? This country is, I would say, it's addicted to this false notion of deterrence. On the one hand, this is an extraordinary thing. We took international human rights law, the right to seek asylum, basically, and we made it US law in the 1980 Refugee Act. Think about that. We thought this was so important, we made it US law. So all people not only have the human right to seek asylum, under US law, they have the right to seek asylum. On the other hand, there is this false notion that started in the 1990s, which has been debunked, but yet I do think that administration after administration, and certainly elected officials, are addicted to this idea of a deterrence-based strategy. We have to block people from coming to the border. If we make it really painful, if we deter them, if we make it deadly for them to come, they won't come. The problem with all of this, first of all, besides the fact all people have the right to seek asylum, secondly, what is wrong with people actually coming to ask for asylum? Why are you dehumanizing them? And so what we see again and again at this point, and I think that we've seen it particularly in the past 4 years, is that people are vilified. There's a rise in nationalism, there's a rise in xenophobia, and people, because they choose to cross a border, are seen inherently not only suspect, but less than human, which has led to things like the forcible family separation policy that we saw in 2018. I mean, and so what we see, everything that we're hearing now is through that distorted prism that people are categorically a threat simply for asking for asylum.
So the way that our law works, as you just informed us, is that people can come, they can seek asylum, and then it has always been the kind of policy of the United States, or not always, but since the 80s, I suppose, that, you know, folks who are here for asylum will get a hearing. They'll have a chance to kind of make their case for asylum. And you know, what can you tell us about that process? What does it look like now? And how are people kind of, you know, how is that system being utilized currently?
Well, what we've seen is more and more restrictions on the right to seek asylum or access to asylum. And the high water mark of that, unfortunately, was under the Trump administration. And that administration set out deliberately to dismantle the asylum system. Went beyond dismantling, pretty much decimated it. And so the Biden administration has come in and has inherited a broken system and explicitly created the goal of established a goal to create a fair and humane system. And great, but that doesn't get you out of your human rights obligations. So we are calling for full access to asylum at the border. And right now we don't have that. People are summarily expelled. Unaccompanied children can come in, but families and adults, single adults, cannot. many do get through for families. We're expecting some changes to this public health quarantine called Title 42 in the next month or so for families. But if you do get in, what happens is that you might be put into an expedited process called expedited removal, which again is a restriction on access to asylum. We really are calling for the rejection of that, and this administration shouldn't use it. But if you do get in past that, then you go to immigration court, and that's where I was for 3 years. And then you follow basically a trial where the government is the trial attorney, and then the immigrant asks for asylum and presents a case. Many people are not represented, and that's where I think the public, certainly, and certainly the people asking for asylum, they don't understand it's a legal case. People have really horrific stories, and as a human being, we think, oh, they should get protection. And that person thinks, oh, I'll come to the United States and they'll help me. But it's actually a legal claim. So you have to meet certain legal criteria. And that's why representation is so important. Because how are you going to navigate something that's akin to the tax system in terms of complexity as a layperson? I mean, geez, I hire, what is it? H&R Block to do my taxes. How am I going to figure it out? Can you imagine like presenting a legal claim? I was persecuted on account of a protected ground that rises to the level of asylum. Like those are all legal terms. It's very hard. That's why Amnesty is calling for universal representation for anybody in immigration proceedings. There is no right to that. People have to hire somebody, even children, 8 years old, 2 years old, doesn't matter. There is no guaranteed right to counsel.
And then a horrible kind of element of this, of course, is the vilification that's happening. The right likes this term catch and release, right? So, they're like fish, I guess. I don't know. They're not humans, certainly. They're just threats. And I think that means, that they're caught coming across the border, they're, asking for asylum, and then they're released into the country. What do you know what the facts are in terms of people showing up for their court hearings, if they've been able to navigate that system to the point where they're actually able to get a hearing?
Yes, I'm so glad that you're asking these questions, because again, this is about facts, and there's an entirely false narrative. First, that people are claiming that under the current administration, the changes in policies that have happened, which are humane and more rights respecting, are somehow a magnet for people. First of all, people are going to flee their home if their home's on fire, and they have the right to ask. Arrivals at the border were actually higher 2 years ago under the former administration than they are now. Extraordinary, right? And that administration deliberately sought to punish people from coming here. Secondly, the catch and release is a false narrative. What that means is, instead of detaining somebody, you give them court papers to show up. And the vast majority, I want to say, if one is represented, I think it's over 90% of people show up for their court. Think of that. And actually what we have is that instead of detention, I think many of us don't stop and think of this. All people have a presumption of liberty. That's a universal human right. If you're an immigrant or a refugee, an asylum seeker, you still have a presumption of liberty. However you enter a country doesn't negate that. So we should always start with that. And if there is an opportunity to release somebody into the community, supported by community-based programs that are proven to work and that save taxpayers millions of dollars, why wouldn't we do that? That's what we're calling for. That sort of dismantling the system and creating one that's based on human rights. And we do know one time that there was a case management program used for families. The Trump administration, one of its first acts, stopped it. It was 99% effective in helping families show up navigate all of their immigration court proceedings. So it works. But there are too many perverse financial incentives with the detention industrial complex. that again and again administrations fall back on detention.
Oh, that's interesting. So the kind of economic gains for campaign contributors and others who are looking to take advantage of, people's plights to ensure that, they've got jobs to house immigrants, or not immigrants, but
Well,
asylum seekers.
It's also like this, the way this is set up, and I think it's similar to prisons, if I understand correctly. The contracts are for a certain number of beds. The prison companies paid for that, no matter what, if somebody's in the bed or not, the prison company is paid. 80% of ICE facilities, immigration and custom enforcement facilities, are run or owned by private prison companies. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Gotcha. Brought to you by ALEC, protected by the American Legislative Exchange Council, one of our favorite hobby horses in this show, is getting to the roots of some of these horrible policies. It's certainly not for human rights, and it's certainly not for freedom. But I think Annabel has a question that she'd like to ask.
Yeah, so it kind of seems like no matter who we buy from, it exploits an industry system that benefits from the migrant labor. Many migrant factory farm workers in the States don't likely have a green card, and it makes less than citizens like at the same job. I feel like I'm part of like a very exploitive system here when I shop for anything like ever, just in general these days. I like to try to support like fair trade or local when I can, but is there like any way to tell that my money isn't going to further profit this like very exploitive system? What can we do for the migrant workers of Kentucky and just in general to make the system a little less corrupt?
I'm really glad you asked that. I will admit it's not so much my area, but this is something that is often, it's invisible. The migrant workers who actually enable us to have the food on the table, who do the delivery services during COVID. Right now, under the heat dome on the West Coast, migrant workers are there picking the produce from the field, working dozens of hours without breaks. And we're feeding off of that. So you're absolutely right. So look at immigration-based organizations such as Forward FWD, or United We Dream. They really are leading the work to make sure that people who help sustain this economy and help sustain our lifestyle and who are the backbone of the country are getting the protections they need. And one way that they are working on this, along with a coalition of people, is to make sure that there's a pathway for permanent protection or citizenship for migrant workers and for dreamers and for other people who are here without documentation or permanent status. So there's a pathway to permanent status.
That's great. Thank you, Denise. Ken, I know you've got a question. Ken, we can't hear you.
Because I'm muted. I am muted. I'm unmuted. Hi. Denise, I think the work that you do is really amazing, and I very much appreciate. It's impressive to me. Like, I feel like humbled by far in comparison. But my question is, well, this is more of a statement, but that's me. I believe no people are illegal. Do you think the term illegal immigrant should be retired or treated as a racist term? Is calling to build a wall at the southern border a racist call? And any studies are Latinx, Hispanic, or South American terrorist security risks? So it's sort of a three-part. But most importantly, I just want to know: are people illegal?
No person is illegal. No person is illegal. Absolutely not. So the law, the Immigration and Nationality Act, the INA, and other law, that's a body of law and regulations, and other congressional laws, they use the term alien. And the current administration has ordered Customs and Border Patrol to stop using that term and to use non-citizen. Because alien, well, it sounds, well, you're not human, right? And all people are human. And also, I strenuously object, as many people in the immigration field, it's not illegal alien, it's not an illegal person. There's nothing illegal with crossing and asking for safety. There's nothing illegal. It's the laws, they're administrative laws, they're not criminal laws, but still, you're not an illegal person. No person's illegal. We just think about that. So I get very upset. And I actually had an interview not too long ago with a journalist, and I was like, that's not illegal. And the person's not illegal. And it's something that's so enmeshed. And I think that's how we think of, I think it's a reflection of systemic racism that is built into the immigration system, that people don't even stop to think that this is actually a human being. And these are classifications that we just use casually. And it also makes other people other, right? Instead of saying, okay, here is somebody seeking safety, or here is a non-citizen, which is a factual statement, but it's not pejorative. And so a lot of language, as we know, matters. And in this space, we see again and again, it's a reflection of systemic racism, particularly against Black and brown people. And that's reflected in the expulsions at the border. It's reflected in deportations. It's reflected in the prison to immigration detention pipeline. It's reflected in just the numbers in detention.
My family in the 80s crossed, some of my family, my grandmother is Cuban. And so in the 80s, there was they were escaping Castro. My grandmother's sister and brother-in-law were escaping and crossed the border. I believe that is now done. Cubans are no longer able to cross the border. Is that correct?
No, they are. They're coming. They're coming. Right now, there's a rising number of people, actually Cubans, who are coming to the southern border and crossing to ask for asylum.
And are these people security risks? Is that or is that just more racism filtering into our?
Yes, that's more fear mongering. Again and again, what we see is what people, critics of people accessing their legal right to seek asylum, they're pinning it on nationalities. People particularly that are coming from the Middle East or coming from South Asia or certain religions, particularly Muslim, if they will try to say that people are infiltrating and there is a terrorist threat. But again and again, studies have not shown that. And there is a very strident, they're very, how do I say this, onerous rules around, we call them terrorism-related inadmissibility grounds. They're called TRIG. And they're quite capacious, and they can pull in a lot of people. And they've been used against people that we would never think about it. Sometimes it seems perhaps appropriate in the sense that they are a militant group back in their country. Other times not. And the most perverse is the US government actually supported what at the time the US government called freedom fighters in Burma. But when those people actually came here and asked for asylum, they were determined under immigration courts to be terrorists. And so there was this very weird thing. One arm, I know, I see you looking, one arm of the government was like, we're gonna give you money to fight for freedom. And the other arm of the government's like, but we're not gonna let you come here and ask for asylum because you're a terrorist. So there is a lot, as we know with that label of terrorist, first of all, there's a lot of baggage to unpack. There's often a lot of racism behind it and nationalism. But in terms of the southern border, it's this bogeyman that's used as another excuse to shut down people's ability and right to ask for asylum.
Yeah, super informative. Thank you so much. And I think Nate has a question for you to close us out.
Yeah. Well, and regarding the horrible irony of not allowing these people whom we encouraged in Burma, to come here, I think of a modification of the old Chris Traverson line: "Freedom is just another word for nowhere left to move." So I know that you have some expertise as regards refugees, and I'm interested in the refugee resettlement process in the United States, and also I'm interested in knowing a little bit about the impact that refugees have on the communities that they end up relocated in.
Nate, this is my favorite. Yes, exactly. Thank you. So refugee resettlement is intended to be a lifeline, and it is resettling refugees from abroad to the United States. It is a very, very selective, limited process, an opportunity. Nobody gets to choose to be resettled. The US government chooses who it wants to resettle. The reason I bring that up is often people bring in security risks, security risks, security risks. The previous administration shut down the asylum system, the refugee resettlement system, first by banning all Muslims altogether, and shutting down the refugee program. The Supreme Court's like, no, you can't do that. So there's a modified version of it living, but we've never quite recovered of that security threat, because many refugees come from Syria or come from Africa. Many people don't realize that. African countries are one of the largest senders of refugees, and that's because of all the armed conflict and other human rights violations there. What resettlement does is that a person can't return home, they can't live in their host country, and they're uniquely vulnerable. And so when the United States resettles somebody, they will go to Lexington. They will go to a town in Kentucky where there's a resettlement agency, and they will start a new life with the support of the resettlement agency and through really exciting opportunities called community sponsorship with the direct involvement of the community. And what I really do want to promote here is a novel idea. It's innovative that the president has signed in the executive order from February 4th. He is authorized the pilot of a private sponsorship model. Now, private sponsorship enables Nate and Kit and, let's say, Ken and Aaron and Annabel to come together as a group and directly sponsor a refugee. It's extraordinary. Many of us know this in the Canadian model, how Canadians directly sponsor refugees. This is a brand new program that the US government is piloting. Amnesty is working with other groups to help shape this, to help roll it out, to promote it, because what we want to do through sponsorship, community sponsorship, private sponsorship, is create more welcoming, strong, and vibrant communities for refugees, yes, but for our own civic well-being, because we come together as a community to welcome and work together. And I think that's so important at a time of xenophobia, nationalism, these deep partisan divides, that people find a way to come together and show, no, we are the values that we say we are.
That's a wonderful bit of information, and thank you so much for your leadership in that effort. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on Afghanistan refugees, right? So as we're closing out there, the Biden administration's made a very clear commitment to end that war. There are a lot of folks who have worked very closely with U.S. interests there that might be vulnerable when we pull out, even as we ratchet down our engagement. Where do things stand with that situation in your understanding?
Well, my understanding is that, first, I do want to say that people who are very interested in this, two of the lead organizations are IRAP, International Refugee Assistance Project, IRAP, and then Human Rights First. They are leading the advocacy on this to get the government to fulfill its commitment and obligations to people who are endangered and became refugees because of their working with the US government and US affiliated organizations. And so there's a commitment to those people that the US government made, and they need to be evacuated. They need to be protected. Of course, we are very concerned about the rise in potential refugee populations after the US leads. And we need to make sure that, just as with the UN Refugee Agency, that people who flee are given access to refugee protection, and that might be in camps in neighboring countries, and then accessibility to refugee resettlement. But I really encourage people right now to go to Human Rights First and IRAP to see the work that they're doing to make sure that the government fulfills its promises.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Denise. I wanted to see if there's any final thoughts you want to leave with our audience as we close this out.
Yes, I would encourage everyone to go to amnestyusa.org. And if you scroll down, you'll see our campaign to free people from detention. And that right there encapsulates of what a lot of Amnesty is trying to do right now, which is to make sure that this administration delivers on its pledges to create a fair and humane system that puts human rights and racial justice at the center. It starts with dismantling the current detention system and making sure there's full access to asylum at the border.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Denise. Thanks for sharing your insights and your expertise with us. I think we've all learned a heck of a lot. And on behalf of all of our viewers, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Annabel, have you got a little bit of information to share with us now?
I do. So next Tuesday, July 6th at 6 p.m. in Lexington, a number of progressive groups are co-sponsoring a rally. It's an event that's part of a national movement organized by the Indivisible Project with a goal of highlighting the For the People Act and the group's efforts to secure passage of the bill despite a filibuster that Mitch and his Senate Republicans implemented when the bill was brought up last week. I think this is an important issue because for a number of reasons, but one of the big ones is just how vulnerable Kentucky is right now to partisan gerrymandering. If anyone remembers, I don't remember, but apparently we had State Rep Jim Wayne on last month, and he made a very powerful spiel about his case for independent redistricting commission, stopping politicians from picking their voters. Well, the For the People Act includes a provision for that, as well as forcing an end to secret dark money PACs by forcing more campaign finance disclosure, same-day voter registration, and expanding voting by mail, and making Election Day a national holiday. So all of that. We know Mitch obviously hates this and has called it a radical socialist proposal that is transparently partisan effort that shows the left's disdain for Americans. So what are we going to do about that? Are we just going to let that go, or are we going to reject his cynical take on protecting our democracy and protecting our ability to vote? Maybe reject it. You can find more about this really fun event that is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. At a website that is either going to be in the comments, but if not, it is deadlinefordemocracy.org, and we hope to see you there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Annabel. So July 6th at 6 p.m. If you are so inclined, feel free to join a large movement of groups working to educate folks about the For the People Act and ensure that our senators give it proper consideration. Nate, what do you got for us?
Oh, okay. Well, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? I think so. I see some of you out there are. Join Progress Kentucky. We are very, very, very close to 4,000 likes on Facebook. So please go check us out there and like us and invite some friends to like us. And we know that our Commonwealth needs more kernels of truth to call out the propaganda and ridiculous claims of folks like Mitch, Rand, Massey, and Barr. We're hatching a plan to reach out to our neighbors and mobilize folks around the state to join us and take action. But it's going to take who? It's going to take you. And it's going to take some resources. We're going to print up some postcards. We're going to add some handwritten messages, and we're going to spread the word about how we can turn Kentucky purple. So right now we got a goal of raising $1,500 for this project. We're less than 20% of the way there. So please consider making a donation right now. Go hit us up on Act Blue. Make a donation to support this campaign. What's the website? I'm so glad you asked. It's secure.actblue.com/donate/progress-KY. And of course, we are always looking for more volunteers. Are you interested in helping put together a biweekly newsletter? Can you bird dog your own representative on social media and share when they embrace Q or the big lie, or just show their rear end? If you can, screenshot it, share it with us, and help us find the worst Politico of the moment and help hold these folks accountable. Join us by heading to bit.ly, that's bit.ly/join PROKY. So next week on the Kernels of Truth, we will be joined by Mr. Doug Price, bringing us his regular feature, Doug Price is Right. Hashtag that one and bring it on home. Let's close out by letting you know that Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State, organized as a 501c4 and affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement. That's CAVE. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. More information can be found at progresskentucky.org about how to volunteer and support ongoing efforts. Production services and media content are provided by Couchfire Media. Couchfire Media ignites multi-camera, live stream, fiction narrative, nonfiction educational, informative, animation, and commercial video production content. For more information about Couchfire Media, go to www.couchfiremedia.com. And where would we be without Kimberly Cecil Jones, who, of course, could not join us tonight, but is a regular feature here on Kernels of Truth. And we want you to know about her amazing show, The Jones Report. It's a weekly live national local news, talk, and conversation show occurring every Tuesday at 7 p.m. And it's hosted not just by Kimberly, but also Mike Breuer, Betsy Foster, and I think they have guests too from time to time. The Jones Report radio program can be found on Facebook at The Jones Report Radio. And lastly, is a little bit awkward, but I'm the guy that writes our music. And you can find more information about me at my website, natosongs.com.
Good job, Nate. I think you're great.
Thank you. Should I do the off-air station ID? That okay. This is WLXU 93.9 LPFM, Radio Lexington, the voice of the people. The views expressed on Progress Kentucky's Kernels of Truth and our guests are not necessarily the views of Radio Lex or its board of directors. The views expressed on Progress Kentucky's Kernel of Truth are our own.
We're done.